story. It's quite famous in the true crime world, but I just find it so fascinating that I wanted to cover it today. I'll do my usual disclaimers now. So this video combines ASMR and true crime. If you don't like ASMR or true crime or the combination of both, please don't watch this video. This video will mention violence and death and other true crime related topics, so please click off if you will find this upsetting, and I never mean any offence to any people mentioned in the cases I cover or anyone affected by the cases. My intent is only to raise awareness. So without further ado, let's get into the story of the Silent Twins. So, a bond between twins is a special one, but the one between June and Jennifer Gibson must surely be one like few others. To the outside world, they were silent, mysterious. They communicated only with each other, excluding even their parents and siblings, and in latter years wrote a huge amount in words, in diary entries, novels and poems in their Pembrokeshire bedroom. That's a place in the UK. They were smart and religious, and they spent their 20s locked away in Broadmoor High Security Hospital. So, if you are aware of the crimes of Myra Hindley and Ian Huntley, the Moors murderers, Ian Huntley spent time in Broadmoor. So it's generally for people who have been declared mentally insane. I'm not sure if that's words, they're probably not the right word, but mentally unstable and have committed crimes. So that's where they spent their 20s. The extraordinary story of the twins inspired a manic street preacher song, which is interesting considering I covered a topic, the manic street preacher's missing band member last week. And it raises some very difficult questions about how they were treated by the authorities. The twins' parents, Aubrey and Gloria Gibbons, came to Britain from Barbados in the early 1960s as part of the Windrush generation. If you don't know what that is, it's a large group of people who came over to the UK after the war to help. They were required, they were advertised, and they wanted jobs. The UK wanted to hire people, and they thought they'd be welcomed with open arms, and they were met with racism, which is awful. And it's called the Windrush generation because one of the first boats, or the first one, was called the Windrush. It was actually a scandal in 2018, so I'd look into that if you're interested. So Aubrey joined the RAF and was soon posted overseas. It was in a military hospital in the British colony of Aden that the twins were born on the 11th of April 1963. Two cute little kids, part of a military family. Surely no one could have seen how their lives would develop, for it is more like one of the works of the imagination and fiction the pair would go on to read and write than a real life tale. Later that year, the family returned to the UK and moved to the RAF base in Linton, Yorkshire. Yorkshire's in the north of England, like down towards the middle, but still in the north. The twins seemed to be happy young girls, though they were late talkers. Sorry if you can hear, I have to have the window open because it's incredibly hot, but my neighbours are in the garden, so I'm really sorry about that. They were described as inseparable, not perhaps unusual twins, and they were noted by teachers as only talking to each other and to their dolls. But gradually they began withdrawing from their family too, apparently forming an even deeper bond with each other, which saw them communicating in a secret language which no one else could understand. When they were 8, the family moved to Devon, which is southern England on the coast. And after their dad was posted aged 11, their father transferred to an RAF base in Pembrokeshire, and the family moved to the Fursey Park housing estate in Haverfordwest. The girls attended Haverfordwest Court Secondary School with their older brother David, but it was not a happy time for them. Black twins were an unusual sight in West Wales. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to say this was in Wales. And Wales, unfortunately, was known for being particularly racist, even compared to England and other places. In the 1970s, and by all accounts, the school environment was a tough one for the twins, with bullying and taunting seemingly commonplace. At school, they refused to read or write, and over time they excluded everyone, including their parents, from their silent world. Yet seemingly nobody took the time or trouble to find out what was happening. That changed in 1976 when a medic arrived at the school to give the pupils their TB jabs. Curious at the twins' impassive reaction to the injections, he contacted a child psychiatrist. This was to be the start of the twins' interaction with the authorities that would eventually see them spend a decade in Britain's most infamous secure hospital. From the psychiatrist, they went to see a speech therapist at Withy Bush Hospital. Though they rarely spoke to anyone save their sibling, the therapist was able to record them speaking and worked out their secret language was a mixture of Barbadian slang and English, spoken very quickly. It was decided that the girls should be transferred to the Eastgate Centre for Special Education in Pembroke, but it seemed they fared little better than at their previous school, remaining silent during their therapy sessions. In 1977, the decision was taken to try separating them to see if that would make them open up. June was sent to St. David's Adolescent Unit, but responded by apparently stopping moving altogether. She would on occasions just lie in bed at the residential centre. The experiment having failed, they eventually reunited at Eastgate. The staff who treated them referred to the relationship as controlling, though it was not clear which one was controlling the other, and even of one twin possessing the other. Whatever was the case, nobody seemed to be able to get through to them. They remained silent save with their twin, and would often communicate with each other in the presence of others simply by gestures. Their eye movements often mirrored each other's. Journalist and mental health campaigner Marjorie Wallace, who would later get to know the twins, described their relationship as a sinister childhood game that got out of control. She said that these rituals she said they had these rituals where they decided between them which one would wake first, which one would breathe first, and the other wasn't allowed to breathe until the first one breathed. It was like some sinister childhood game that got out of control. When the girls turned 16, they left school and returned to Haverfordwest, their extraordinary bond seemingly as strong as ever, but now facing the added difficulties of adolescence too. While they refused to communicate with the outside world, it seemed they poured out their thoughts into written word. The police would later discover a vast quantity of diaries, essays, poems, short stories, and novels written by the girls. One of June's books, Pepsi Cola Addict, about a student being seduced by a teacher, was self-published. In one diary entry about the siblings' relationship, Jennifer wrote, "We have become fatal enemies in each other's eyes. We feel the irritating, deadly rays come out of our bodies, stinging at each other's skin. I say to myself, I can get rid of my own shadow. Impossible, or discovered alcohol, drugs and boys. Less than a year later, they would be locked up in a psychiatric hospital. After years of turning away from the world, in late October 1981, they suddenly projected themselves outwards and went on a 5-week spree of vandalism, burglary, thefts and arson in Haverfordwest, which ended when they were caught red-handed trying to burn down Pembrokeshire Technical College. The twins subsequently pleaded guilty to 16 counts of burglary, theft and arson, and in May 1982 they were sentenced under the Mental Health Act to indefinite detention at Broadmoor. Journalist Miss Wallace would later say of the court case, the unemotional legal pantomime went around them without touching them. She would later write a book about the girls called The Silent Twins. So here's an extract from June Gibbons' diary the day after the twins were sentenced. Spinning in circles, sick, mental, psychopathic. Imagine how I felt. Me, a mental psychopath, a dangerous, evil, ruthless criminal. Me. At last my torment, my self-consciousness, my violence is known. I am labelled. Ah, now I know my fate. June Alison Gibbons, aged just 19, going down in history as a psychopath. Please God, don't let me suffer as much in my new life as I have entered here. Let me be bold enough to speak openly. Let me trust the doctors and nurses and no longer be afraid of people. For the past 7 months, I have been a soul with no hope. Don't let this disease paralyze me. Again, destroying my abilities, tying up my tongue like firewood. So that shows, one, she's very intelligent and a very good writer, and two, incredibly self-aware. So I'll just carry on. While on remand and then serving their sentence at Broadmoor, the twins continued to write copious diaries in prison notebooks. In one entry, Jennifer wrote an entry which showed the complexity of the pair's relationships. Quote, I really aim to be alone, yet I am deceiving myself. Can I stand being alone? My heart does not beat so fast now, it only beats when Jay is around. As well as prolific writers, they were also apparently voracious readers, consuming works by D.H. Lawrence, Oscar Wilde, Dylan Thomas, Emily Bronte, Mary Shelley, and many more. They made a number of attempts to gain their release over the years, apparently writing to the Queen on occasion, but their applications were always rejected. More than a decade would pass inside the secure hospital, and in latter years the pair did apparently begin to talk to the hospital staff. I'm just going to interject here and say this is actually read from an article on Wales Online, but it has so many spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes in it. That's why I keep tripping up, so sorry about that. An entry in Jennifer's diary reads, "What a senseless, degrading havoc I have made of my poor, sweet human life." However, despite their copious diary entries, they were heavily medicated at Broadmoor, and their creative writing, their poetry and short writing dwindled. Eventually, in 1993, so they were 30 this year, that year, the decision was taken to move them to a medium security unit closer to home, the Caswell Clinic at Glanrid Hospital in Bridgend. On the morning of March 9th, they boarded a van from Berkshire, but on arrival, Jennifer was noted to be physically weak and unwell. She was rushed to the Princess of Wales Hospital, but died at 6:30 p.m. that evening. A post-mortem examination revealed an undiagnosed myocarditis, inflammation of the heart. She was 29 years old. June remained at the Caswell for a year following her sister's death before returning to West Wales, where she tried to rebuild her life. Wallace believes that during their stay in hospital, they began to believe that in order written by June. It reads, "Once we were two, we two made one. We no more two, through life be one. Rest in peace." An extraordinary and complex life, no doubt, and one from the outside, and perhaps from the inside too, that is hard to understand. A life of sisterly bonds, of love and hate, of isolation, imagination, words and sadness. The story of the Silent Twins would later inspire the Manic Street Preachers song Tsunami on their album. "This is my truth, tell me yours." The words of the opening verse read, "For you, my dear sister, holding on to me forever, disco dancing with the rapists, your only crime is silence." So that's the end of that article. I hope you learned something and learned about the Silent Twins. I think it's really interesting that it was, like I say, if it was made into a film and you didn't know the story, you would think it's good, but it's too far-fetched. It's that amazing, and I wonder if these things would have happened to them had they been born more recently and not had to face such serious racism when they were younger. I think, though it's not the only thing, that was probably a huge contributing factor to their mental health issues. And who can blame them? They never really hurt anyone but themselves, at least not physically. And I just feel for them so much. And it's really interesting. I have heard that it's possible not to necessarily will yourself to die, but you can die of a broken heart and things, which sounds unbelievable, but it is a thing. So maybe it's similar to that, or maybe it's just complete coincidence, and she might not have died of anything related to her issues with her sister. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and if I have missed any information out that is interesting about the case, and also if you have any suggestions for channel content, whether it be a true crime case, a history mystery, or